What's going on, everyone? Season 9 of Smite is right around the corner, January 25th, so I wanted to do a kind of patch notes series, but this specific version of patch notes is super long. So I'm going to break it up into different sections: relics, items, gods, crit adjustments, etc, etc. Today's video is going to be about relics. Relics are changing pretty significantly. There are still going to be kind of the same relics, but Smite has added a whole new branch off of those existing relics, so you can upgrade those accordingly. I'm going to frame this in the Joust game mode because that's the mode I play the most, but if you're really just looking for what those changes are, I'll be going over all of them in pretty good detail. So without further ado, let's get into those relics. First things first, let's go over the relic reworks. One thing that's not changing is the base relics. You can get one relic at level 1. You can buy your second relic at level 12. But what is changing is that the tier 1 relic is free, just like last year, just like past seasons. The tier 2 relic is going to cost 300 gold, where it cost 500 before. And then the tier 3 relic is going to cost an additional 300 gold. You can actually upgrade these items anytime you want to. So if you wanted, you could buy that 800 gold tier 3 relic before you even get out into the lane, right? Some of these relics you'll see have pretty insane passives on them, the tier 3s, so that could be a viable strategy. But keep in mind, if you're spending 800 gold on a relic, maybe you don't have the ability to get a tier 2 item that you used to before, or you can't get a starter that you would have before. So you're going to have to make some sacrifices, make some decisions. You can still do what most people normally do and get that tier 1 relic first and then upgrade it later once it's appropriate, but you're going to have more options for the usage of these relics. So the first relics that we'll talk about is Aegis. Aegis Amulet, cooldown decreasing from 180 to 170. You'll be able to use that a little bit more often. The upgraded Amulet, the tier 2, cooldown decrease from 150 to 140 seconds, so again, you'll have that up a little more often. The thing that's changing is the tier 3 upgrades. So you have a choice of 2 different upgrades that you can upgrade to after you hit that tier 2 Aegis. The first one is called Aegis of Acceleration. Using this item makes you invulnerable to damage and healing for 1.5 seconds, prevents you from taking any actions. Similar to the other tier 1 and tier 2, you can still move. However, this upgraded path has an additional passive on it, or an additional effect. Each instance of damage prevented during that 1.5 second time frame gives you 7.5% movement speed for a full 4 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, so 21% movement speed. You can kind of think of the implications of this, right? Aegis is used to survive something. If you're trying to survive something, you're most likely trying to run away from it. So not only are you going to have a little bit of time to negate any damage completely, but this upgrade is going to give you an additional speed boost for you to run away from whatever the danger is. The other path, a little more offensive, Aegis of Judgment, you're going to have that invulnerability just like you would before. But the passive on this one is that you're going to explode at the end of that 1.5 seconds, dealing 100 damage plus 50% of the prevented damage as magical damage in a 30 unit radius. And actually, I think this has been nerfed in the PTS down to 50% or 30% of the prevented damage as magical damage. So I will update this accordingly if that is the case. The damage dealt by this effect is capped at 50% of your maximum health. So if you lose half of your health, that's all you can do in that as damage to the enemy who has CC'd you or who has been damaging you, basically in that 30 unit radius. Something to keep in mind, 30 unit radius, not very big. If you think of an auto attack range, that's 55 units. So about half of the auto attack range in a circle around you is where that Aegis is going to explode for. Thinking of use cases for this item, maybe something if you're facing something like a Baron Somdi, right? You know you're going to get CC'd, you have Aegis, you not only want to survive, but maybe you just want to go back in on the Baron. You get sucked towards him, you hit Aegis, you don't get damaged, 1.5 seconds goes by, and then all of that prevented damage is going to go back into Baron, right? So kind of an offensive version of Aegis. I think Aegis of Acceleration is going to be used more often and is going to be more useful in a variety of cases, whereas Aegis of Judgment, if there's maybe a high CC team that you know is you're going to end up close range to them, you could buy this upgrade in those cases. But I really think that the Acceleration one just really has more uses. It's more versatile. But both of these items, pretty good. You're getting Aegis a lot of times as a squishy in Joust anyways. So 2 pretty good build paths on the upgraded Aegis amulets. A little PTS adjustment that I wanted to add on to the end of this one too. Aegis of Judgment, decreasing that max damage from 50% of max health to 30% of your max health. So if you remember, this is kind of that ability to explode when you get close to an enemy god after Aegis expires. You're not going to be able to do quite as much damage compared to what you were before. So very important to kind of know and adjust your strategies based on the new information that we get. Second relic we're going to be going over is Frenzy, now called Belt of Frenzy, increasing that damage from 10% to 15% more. Duration increasing on the tier 1 from 5 to 6 seconds, so you're going to have a longer period of time to have that increased damage. And then cooldown increased a little bit from 120 seconds to 130 seconds, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer between those fights to use Frenzy. Tier 2 also increased that damage increase from 10 to 15%. No more pen buffs, you don't get extra pen on this upgrade. But and also the duration is decreased from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. So in all reality, this item getting a little bit worse as far as you're not going to have it for as long, and you're not going to have penetration on top of it. The cooldown is also decreased from 120 to 110, so you're going to have it up a little bit more often than that original Frenzy. The 2 build paths, the 2 tier 3 versions of Frenzy are going to be Belt of the Berserker. Using this item grants allied gods within 70 units 30% increased damage dealt to all targets, including objectives. That's a 50% attack speed increase, decaying every 5 seconds for 6 seconds. So I, as most people probably know, am not a huge believer in hunters in Joust, but with something like Belt of the Berserker, and if you win one fight as a hunter and you have an ADC, for example, let's say you have Soul and Charybdis, right? They're going to have not only 30% increased damage dealt to an objective, but also a 50% attack speed increase for a full 6 seconds. That's going to just be able to absolutely melt any objective you have in front of your face. If you're a solo ADC, you could also go grab the Bull Demon King kind of by yourself if you have this item. I think Frenzy maybe, especially if you were running any sort of ADC comp, is going to be a must-buy for somebody in your Joust comp, just because 30% extra damage is just really, really good. For team fights, sure, but even if you win a team fight without it, now you have a limited amount of time to push down objectives. This is going to help you do that very quickly and either run out of there or finish the game off if you can. The second upgrade is going to be Belt of Insatiable Hunger. Using this item grants all allied gods within 7 units a 15% increased damage dealt to all targets. Again, pretty similar to that tier 2 item. You get 25% attack speed increase for 10 seconds. The interesting passive on this one is that if you earn a kill or assist on an enemy god, you're going to have the duration of that attack speed refresh, right? So you can have up to a full 20 seconds of 25% attack speed increase. To me, I don't think this is as valuable as that 30% objective damage, especially because it's dependent on killing a enemy god. You may win a fight, without using this in the first place, and then at that point, you essentially just have a tier 2 Belt of Frenzy with 25% attack speed. I think Berserker is going to be far superior. I don't know why you would build Insatiable Hunger over Berserker in this current state as far as being in Joust. Maybe there's a use case that I'm not necessarily thinking of, but realistically, I think Berserker is far superior in this tier 3 item choice. On PTS, they did adjust Belt of Insatiable Hunger, so you're not going to have it for 10 seconds, that additional 10-second trigger when you get a kill. Now it's going down to 8 seconds Apparently this item is more popular than the other Frenzy, so they wanted to nerf it a little bit. The next relic we'll be going over is Blink Rune. Not going to have any changes from the current version of it. 140 second cooldown. You can teleport 45 units away as soon as you use it, and you can't have taken damage in the last 3 seconds for you to use it as well. Blink Rune, the only thing that's changing is that the damage mitigation buff has been removed, so it's the exact same as the tier 1 Blink Rune, except for it's 120 second cooldown, I believe. So that's really the only difference is the upgrade. You're going to have it up a little bit more often. Obviously, Blink is a really great item, relic, in general, especially for some of the guardians that need it to initiate, or even mages or something that you can use it to initiate, like Chang'e. So let's go over the tier 3 upgrades for Blink Rune. The first one is Corrupted Blink Rune. You're going to have the same effect as the tier 2. You can teleport 45 units away. Can't be used if you've taken damage or dealt damage in the last 3 seconds. The difference is with this one, you're going to slow all enemies' movement speed and attack speed by a full 15% within a 25 unit radius of you for 2.5 seconds. So I mentioned this earlier with one of the other relics, but a 25 unit radius is a pretty small window, so you're going to have to be pretty accurate if you use this this version of upgraded Blink. An auto attack range is usually 55 units, so less than half of that in a circle is what you're going to be hitting that slow for. So you're gonna have to be super accurate. It would be valuable for sure if you really need to get on somebody who's kind of slippery as far as like movement speed stims, right? Something like AMC or Giannis maybe, or someone like that that you really want to get close to and you can't have them run away quickly. But like I said, 25 units, pretty small. In a team fight based mode like Joust, I don't know. I'll have to test this one out a little bit. The other upgrade path is Scorching Blink Rune. This one interests me a lot more. 45 unit away teleport. Your teleport path is going to leave a trail of wildfire. It's going to deal 20 true damage plus 4 true damage per level to enemies. That's going to tick every half second for 4 seconds, right? So if you do just really quick math on that, if you're level 20, you have 80 true damage plus 20 true damage. That's going to tick 6 times. That's up to 600 true damage that you can get on this item if you hit every single proc of that, which again, not necessarily likely, but just thinking about some of the possibilities with this item. Really aggressive version of Blink. I think this one is going to be the one that most people end up getting in Joust. Think of something like a Cerberus or a Xing Chen, or even like, I don't know, trying to think out of the box, something like a Fenrir maybe, where you can blink in, you have this scorching field, you ult them, you grab them, and now you hold them in the field for that full 6 second duration, 4 second duration, excuse me. Now they're taking 600 true damage plus whatever they're taking on top of damage from your teammates kind of just barreling into them with abilities, right? So I love the idea behind Scorching Blink Rune. We'll have to see if it's as useful as I think it's going to be, but I think this one again is the better one for any of those gods that can follow up and make sure that you can put them back into that field. Another PTS update on Scorching Blink Rune here too that I wanted to make sure to include in this. Increase the damage over time duration from 4 seconds to 1 second. So you're not going to have 8 ticks of that 600 damage or whatever it is. You're only going to have 2 ticks per application. So you're going to have some damage attached to this item, but not quite as much as originally thought. Next relic we'll go over is Bracer of Radiance. The tier 1 Bracer getting a power buff increase from 10 to 15%. So as a reminder, the original one, if you're above half health, you go through this Bracer of Radiance field, basically a ward field. You get 10% power. Now that's moving to 15. If you're under half health, you get 15% movement speed. The cooldown also increased from 100 to 120 seconds. So you're going to have to wait a little bit longer to use this bracer, use the effects from the bracer. Tier 2 now, Greater Bracer of Radiance. Doesn't function as a sentry ward, but the cooldown will be 100, just like the original bracer was before. So the only thing that's going to change on the upgraded bracer here is that you have that cooldown of 100 seconds. You'll be able to use it more often. The two upgrade paths that are going to be available for bracer: one, the Bracer of Brilliance. You're going to have that ward effect, a 90-second ward. Instead of 15% increased power when allies move through it, they're going to have 20% increased power when they move through it, and 20% movement speed for a full 8 seconds. You're also going to have that sentry ward effect on this bracer, and if it's destroyed, the cooldown is again reduced by 20 seconds. I'm not 100% sure what the cooldown is going to be. I would assume that is 100, just like the upgraded bracer, but that doesn't necessarily say on the patch notes here, so we'll probably have to test that out once time comes. So really this is really just an upgraded version of what the original bracers are. It doesn't really change that much, other than just getting more power, more movement speed. Second upgrade path is Bracer of Illumination. You're going to have the ward effect. Allies that move through it get 10% increased power if above half health, or 15% movement speed if below half health for 8 seconds. It's going to act as a sentry ward. Once you set it down, you're also going to get what Smite is calling a light sprite that's going to patrol an area back and forth, revealing enemies. So a moving ward, a moving sentry ward, essentially. So that in itself is useful. I'm a little confused on this item because it looks like you're going to have less power if you upgrade to this item, right? You're going to have less of an increase in power. If tier 1 is 15% power increase and tier 3 is 10% power increase, I don't know if this is a typo or what, but I don't know why you would get this version, right? You have a patrolling sprite, but honestly, Joust map is a little bit small that it's not going to be as useful, and you get the same amount of movement speed. So yeah, I honestly don't really think that this relic is very useful in Joust. You have the ability to, I guess, maybe put a bracer down in lane or something and take advantage of some of the effects that happen off of that. 20% power is great, obviously, and movement speed never hurts, but I don't know. I think if you're sacrificing a relic slot for this, why not just get Frenzy, right? You can get 30% extra damage on everything, and get extra movement speed. So to me, I don't think you want to be buying Bracer and Joust at all. Next relic we have up is Meditation Cloak, being changed. The name is being changed to Cloak of Meditation. Doesn't matter too much. More importantly, you're going to have an increased base health restore from 8 to 12. So before, where you had 8 seconds plus percentage of your health missing ticking as health regeneration, now you're going to have that 12 base health that's ticking every single one of those ticks. So you're going to have more health every single one of those ticks, which is just more significant. You're also having that increased missing health scaling from 5% to 6%. So instead of having 5% of your missing health being restored on each pulse and of your mana being restored on each pulse, now you're going to have 6%. So 12 plus 6% of your missing health and mana on every single pulse. Not to mention, each pulse reduces those cooldowns for the abilities. So Med Cloak, really good. Cooldown increase from 140 to 150 seconds. That's a pretty long cooldown, but if you're gonna have one or two of these on your team, you want to go early comp. It's going to be even better for you to sustain back up from the early fight and kind of snowball if you want to. Greater Meditation Cloak, remove the cooldown reduction effect from that one. Increasing the base health restore from 8 to 12, just like tier 1. Increasing the missing health scaling from 5% to 6%, just like the tier 1. And the cooldown decreasing from 140 to 130. So the only difference between tier 1 med and tier 2 med is going to be you have it up 20 seconds more often. Okay, let's talk about the tier 3 Meditation Cloak upgrades. The first one, Cloak of the Ascetic. Using this item causes you to enter a meditative state. They get 40 plus 70% of their missing health and mana for each tick. So that is obviously very, very good. 40 plus 70% of missing health and mana, and it ticks for 4 times, so that's at least 160 health restored, plus 7% of whatever their missing health is on each tick. So a ton of health that's going to get built back up with this one. Each pulse also reduces cooldowns for all abilities by 1.5 seconds. So that cooldown reduction kind of bonus that you had before on the original med cloaks, now put onto the Cloak of the Ascetic, but you're going to have, instead of 1 second cooldown reduction, you have 1.5 second cooldown reduction. So this is going to be obviously still really good. You could buy this tier 1, right? Basically, go get red, get into a red fight. You guys are poked down, hit med, Cloak of the Ascetic, excuse me, and then now you're healed basically completely back up, ready to fight, ready to push and snowball again. So in Joust, this will be a really good item. The second variation of Cloak is going to be Cloak of the Avatar. You have the meditative state. You get 12 plus 6% of missing health, just like the tier 2 one was before. But now you're going to get a protective barrier of wind, is what it looks like here. And it's going to explode if an enemy comes close to you, which is going to knock them back. I don't think this is a good variation of this item in Joust. If you're getting singled out and dove on by yourself in Joust, your teammates are probably doing something wrong. Maybe if you wanted to get this for just a little bit more survivability, you can, but I still think Cloak of Ascetic is far and away the better version of this. Even if you just look at the actual original healing, 40 plus 70% per tick every second for 4 seconds is going to be so much more healing than 12 plus 6% of health and mana healing each tick. So I don't know. I don't see a use for Cloak of the Avatar, really. You have a bunch of other upgraded relics that can be used to kind of do the same thing, like Aegis with sprint attached to it, right, that we talked about a little bit before. Something like that, I feel like would help you survive way more times than something like this Cloak of the Avatar, where an enemy, you have to rely on an enemy getting close to you to even knock them back, and they can still do damage to you, if they're further away and not in that 15 units. So to me, Cloak of the Avatar, far inferior. Buy Cloak of the Ascetic. All right, I wanted to amend some of the med cloak things I said, just because now the PTS round 2 has just come out and there are adjustments to med cloak. So it's decreasing that missing health and mana scaling from 6% to 5%, so less originally, and then decreasing that base health and mana restore from 12 to 10 per tick, just by default. So a little less healing at level 1, which I think is probably fair, less ability to snowball in the beginning. Greater Med Cloak also having that same reduction from 6 to 5%, and from base health and healing restore from 12 to 10. Both of the upgrades also getting a little bit of nerfs here already in PTS 2 before Season 9 starts. So decreasing that missing health and mana scaling from 6 to 5%, and decreasing the base health and mana restore from 12 to 10. So same thing, less health on that initial heal. And then Cloak of the Ascetic, decreasing that missing health and scaling from 7 to 6%, so still more than the other 3, but less than it was originally. And then that decreased base health and mana restore from 40 to 30 per tick. Still significantly higher than the other 3 versions of this meditation cloak, but important to kind of adjust your expectations, because it's not going to be what was originally outlined in the patch notes. The next relic we have up is Cursed Ankh. The shield damage is going to be increased from 50 to 75%, so you're going to be doing more damage against shields. Another 10% increased damage taken debuff when healed by god abilities too. So not only if it's a shield, you're going to do more damage to them. If somebody's being healed, they're going to take 10% more damage than they would have before. This item is a lot better on tier 1. And realistically, some of the shield meta, I guess, for lack of a better term, that we've seen in Joust, right? Bulwark of Hope as an item, Book of the Dead as an item, Pridwin as an item. Ankh is going to be able to deal with those on top of healing, so that dual kind of usefulness makes me like Ankh a little bit more in this next season. Upgraded Ankh, Greater Cursed Ankh, going to have that increase in shield damage as well from 50 to 75%. Going to have the before where an enemy was taking 20% more damage, that's going down to 10%. So matching the original Ankh, and then the cooldown is being decreased from 120 to 100 seconds. So you can kind of see the theme, what's going on here, right? They're matching basically what the tier 1 and tier 2 relics do, but the cooldown is going to be reduced on the tier 2 relic, which is why it's cheaper. It doesn't have as many effects on it, but that's kind of how the tier 1 and tier 2 relic relationship is being broken down. So let's get into the Ankh upgrades. Blighted Ankh is one of the upgrades, reducing healing received by all enemy gods by 60% for 10 seconds, removes 75% of any currently applied shield, just like the upgrade, and just like the original Ankh. Now enemies that are healed by god abilities are going to take 20% more damage, so that's what the old upgraded Ankh was. And then on top of that, all healing reduced by this effect, right? If you hit this on the enemies, any healing that you're reducing from their heals is going to be distributed to your allies. So not only are the enemies going to be healing less, you're going to be basically stealing health from them. So you can think of it almost like a Cerberus kind of passive. This will make this item a lot better against heal comps, right? If you're going against something like a Aphrodite that's attached to an Achilles and then a Terra or something, right? If you have this item, your team is going to be healing for an insane amount while they aren't. So that's going to put the fight in your favor. I really like this upgrade. I think it's great. I think it's going to help with a lot of the healing frustration that a lot of people have. The other upgrade, Drowned Ankh, you're going to have that 40% healing reduction, so not quite as much as Blighted. Still going to remove 75% of any currently applied shield. Enemies that are healed by the god abilities are going to have what's called a pool of miasma beneath them. That's going to last 6 seconds, and that deals damage in a percent. So 2% of the enemy's current health every 5 seconds while the enemies are inside of it. It also refreshes that Ankh debuff effect, so they're going to be reducing that healing by 40 seconds. I don't know what this one necessarily looks like. I don't know how big the pool of miasma is. I don't know how easy it's going to be for enemy gods to just walk out of that miasma pool. So in my mind, I think Blighted is probably going to be the more consistent option here. You also get, more of that healing reduction for 10 seconds right away with Blighted Ankh. It has less things that need to happen for it to be useful. So in my mind, I think Blighted Ankh is the better option. But we'll have to play around with it, I guess, once these items are released. Next relic we have is going to be Heavenly Wings. So the only thing happening with this is the cooldown is going to be increased from 120 to 130. The greater Heavenly Wings cooldown is being decreased from 120 to 110. So again, same effect as the original tier 1 Heavenly Wings, but with a reduced cooldown. And then there's also a removed haste effect. So the auto attacks and stuff are going to be coming out more normally. The upgrades on Sprint. As a Guardian, I think these are pretty interesting. The relics actually have some of the relics have some sort of CC attached to them, which I think may get buffed as time goes on, because I think there's some possibility for abuse with items like this. For example, Entangling Wings, now you're going to have you and your allied gods, you have a 20% movement speed for 5 seconds. You can't be slowed during that. But also, upon use, this relic is going to root enemies around you for a full second. So if you think of any kind of W key god that really wants to get close to you, they don't have to get as close anymore, right? So if I'm Ares and I run up to you, you already know what I'm going to be doing, right? But now if I get just close enough to even hit you with this Entangling Wings, I'm going to be able to root you. So if I root you as Ares, that sets me up for a super easy chain. And if I chain you, now you can't move. So I think there's going to be some possibilities for gods that are less useful because they have harder to hit abilities. Now they have an extra CC if they need to. You also have the possibility for like somebody to jump in and then use Entangling Wings to root the enemy team, and if they don't have a dash or a jump or anything like that, now that's also set up for your entire team. It's a free CC that you may not have in your kit otherwise. So I think Entangling Wings is going to be super, super interesting. I'm excited to try it out. And yeah, that's CC attached to relics is going to be something that I think is going to be looked pretty closely at, but I'm definitely going to use it when it comes out right now. The other upgrade option is Hasten Wings. Using the item increases movement speed for 20%, just like the other items. It also makes them immune to any slows, grants haste. So basic attack, you're going to be able to move just as quickly as you would, without basic attacking. And then successful basic attacks increase the duration by 1 second, up to an additional 4. So if you're really trying to like help your ADC hit more autos and have that ability to just kind of stick on somebody more easily, this could be an option for you. But personally, I still think the Entangling Wings is just too good to pass up. Maybe if you're an ADC, you get Hasten Wings or something too by yourself, but I don't know. I would myself lean to Entangling Wings as a better upgrade path in this specific relic tree. Next relic we have is Horrific Emblem, increasing the attack speed debuff from 15 to 25% on the tier 1. So they're going to be attacking 25% slower instead of 15% slower. 15% decreased damage dealt debuff. On top of that is going to be added to the tier 1, so enemies are going to be doing 15 decreased damage if you hit them with that tier 1 Horrific. And the cooldown is increasing from 110 to 130. Greater Horrific Emblem, here it mentions that they have no changes, but when I was reading through the old Horrific Emblems, I don't see any change between Horrific Emblem and Horrific Emblem number 2 now, because you're going to have 30% movement speed reduction on them both. You're going to have 25% attack speed debuff on them both, and you're going to have 15% damage dealt debuff on them both. This cooldown is going to 130. This cooldown is listed at 130. So in my mind, these two items are exactly the same, but that obviously can't be the case if one is costing more than the other. So I'm not sure if they forgot to mention that this is going to a cooldown of 110 or something. We'll just have to see what that looks like when the actual update comes through. The two upgrade courses that you can go on Horrific Emblem. First one, Emblem of Increasing Peril. So using the item still slows the movement speed of enemy gods for 30%, just like the original two. Attack speed reduced by 25% for the duration. Damage dealt reduced by 15%, so that's the same as the other two as well. But now if an enemy deals 10% of an allied's god's maximum health, the debuff effects are increased by 10%, stacking each up to 3 times. So if the enemy god is fighting back and starts dealing more damage to you, then that god is eventually just going to be doing less and less damage over time, up to, it looks like, 10% debuff 3 times, so 55% attack speed reduction and 45% damage dealt reduction if they hit all of those stacks. So at that point, they're just going to be basically pillow fighting you. This is pretty dependent on if the enemy keeps fighting, which I don't know. If most people get Horrific, they're not going to be looking to fight. So I don't know how useful this one will be. The other option is Emblem of Trembling Terror. So using the item still slows the movement speed by 30%. The attack speed reduced by 25%, just like the other two. Damage dealt reduced by 15%, just like the other two. But now if an enemy is dealt 30% of their maximum health during the duration, they're also trembled for a full 1.5 seconds. So again, another one of those relics with CC kind of attached to it. I don't necessarily like this one that much either. I think the two upgrade paths here are somewhat weak. For 500 extra gold, you basically get a 1.5 second tremble on one of these, and then you get the debuff is very significant on increasing peril, but again, it's super dependent on the enemy dealing damage to an allied god. So I don't necessarily like either one of these upgrade paths too much. If you made me choose one, I think I would go Trembling Terror, just because at least then it's depending on you attacking the enemies and dealing 30% of their maximum health, at which point they're going to be trembled, which allows you to kind of follow up on it. So if you're trying to single out one person, especially Trembling Terror might be the best option for you, but I don't know. I like Horrific. I don't think either one of these options are that great. Magic Shell, the next relic we have up, increasing damage reduction from basic attacks from 20% to 25%. So not only are you getting the 30 plus 12 per level shield on your allies, you're also giving them a little bit more mitigation as far as if somebody's trying to basic attack them, they're going to be doing 25% less damage compared to 20%. Greater Magic Shell, only thing that's changing is that the cooldown is going to be reduced from 150 to 130. The two upgrade paths for Shell are also kind of interesting. Fortifying Shell, you get that 100 plus 12 health shield per god level for 3 seconds, 50% reduced damage from basic attacks for the duration, so that's pretty good. And then when the shield is broken or it expires, allies gain a new buff providing 20% damage mitigation and 20% movement speed for 3 seconds. So this one is an even more survivable version of Fortifying Shell. So if you really want to go that defensive route, this one is going to be kind of your go-to. 20% damage mit and 20% movement speed just allows your allies to kind of get out of something that maybe they wouldn't have gotten out of before. The second version of this is Phantom Shell. So something that is very interesting is that Phantom as a relic is being removed. So something to think about. I'll probably go over this a little bit more when I talk about kind of Odin specifically, or somebody, some of those gods that have changes coming. But if you want that Phantom effect, you're going to need to upgrade to Phantom Shell in Season 9. Very, very important to remember. Write that down in your notes. No more Phantom, you need Phantom Shell. Using this item applies a shield to you and allies for 150 health plus 15 health per god level, so a little bit more of an initial shield on the Phantom Shell compared to Fortifying Shell. You take 50% reduced damage from basic attacks, so that's the same. But the other passive effect on this is that it allows you and allied gods to pass through players and player-made objects. So you get that Phantom effect on Phantom Shell. A little more defense, plus a passive of going through walls on Phantom Shell, a little less initial defense on Fortifying Shell, but more escapability if the enemies are able to kind of break through that initial shell. Both of these, I think, are going to be really good. Phantom Shell is obviously going to be kind of a must-have if you're facing someone like Odin or Kabrakan or whoever else. You need that item in your toolkit, which inadvertently kind of buffs Odin early, right? It's going to either force the enemies to buy this Phantom Shell early and not buy something else, or if they don't buy it early, well, then there's no way to get out if you don't have a leap or something like that. So something to definitely keep in mind. Magic Shell also getting a round of kind of nerfs already in the PTS round 2, so I wanted to make sure those were included. Decreasing the basic attack damage debuff from 25% to 20%. Greater Magic Shell also getting that same nerf on it. Fortifying Shell decreasing the basic attack damage debuff from 50 to 40%, and decreasing that damage mitigation buff after the shield fades from 20 to 15%. So still going to be that option if you need to try to run away. You're still going to have the movement speed attached to it if your shield gets bursted down. But you're not going to have quite as much damage mitigation, so it's not going to be quite as hard to kill you as it was before. And then Phantom Shell also having that decreased basic attack damage debuff from 50% to 40%. So a little less valuable against some of those basic attack gods than it was, but still probably something that you wanted to buy anyways. Next relic we have is Purification Beads. Cooldown increase from 160 to 170 on the tier 1. Cooldown increase from 130 to 140 on the tier 2. Everyone knows what beads does, so I don't think I have to necessarily go over that. It's going to get you out of any sort of CC ability as long as you're not knocked up or banished. The two upgrade paths on beads, option 1 is going to be chaotic beads. So just like the old beads, removing crowd control effects, make you immune to new ones for a full 2 seconds. Any CC effect that is cleansed during this time is going to send out a homing projectile to the enemy who applied it. That's going to deal 7% of maximum health. So if you think of chaotic beads, for example, if you have a team of 3 in Joust, and you all have chaotic beads, and you get Ares ulted, for example, let's say. If you all use chaotic beads, that Ares is going to take 20% of his maximum health, just right off the jump there. So you can use these beads to kind of counter some of those hard CC abilities, and by counter I don't just mean like not get pulled in, right? You can literally counter it with chaotic beads, and if you know that Ares is taking 20% damage right off the jump, you can immediately turn and try to kill the Ares or whoever it is that's CCing you, right? So a very, very interesting take on beads, especially if you have one that you think you're going to get multiple people CC'd often. Chaotic beads will be your go-to. And then obviously I know I'm a Joust person, but if you think of this in like Arena, right, or something, that's 35% of maximum health if all 5 people use beads, so pretty good. The other upgrade path is temporal beads. You have the crowd control reduction or removal just like you do on normal beads. The passive on this one is that it reduces all your active cooldowns by 3 seconds. 3 seconds is very, very significant as far as cooldowns are concerned, especially once you get to late game. So this one could be just as viable of an option. I still think in Joust, chaotic is pretty good. An additional 7% damage on anything just for absolutely free. I like that a lot. So we'll see. Both of these are good upgrade options to me. It just really depends on if you think you're going to get CC'd or if multiple people are going to get CC'd or not. Quick little amendment to chaotic beads. Since the PTS, I've been trying to follow this as closely as I can before getting this video released. I have the original descriptions of the relics, but also wanted to put these in there. Chaotic beads can only trigger 2 times per god per usage of chaotic beads. So some of those CCs that had like constant triggering effects like Hun Bats, it would be doing way too much damage if you hit chaotic beads during it to the point of killing Hun Bats just outright, basically. Also updating the description to say that the item deals true damage equal to 7% of their maximum health, and that the damage only triggers on hard CC and roots. So if you don't know what hard CC is, I do have another video on like types of CC, so you can check that out. But important to know that chaotic beads isn't going to be doing as much damage to some of those constantly ticking hard CC abilities. Next up we have Thorns. Reflect damage being decreased from 30% of all damage taken to 25% of all damage taken. You're going to have negative 25% lifesteal debuff for enemies attacking you. So enemies are going to have 25% less lifesteal, basically, is what that means. On top of what it had before, which is just that damage reflect. Cooldown on this being increased from 120 to 140, so you're going to have to wait 20 extra seconds to use this. The Greater Shield of Thorns, decreasing the reflect damage from 30 to 25% again. And then the lifesteal debuff for enemies attacking you is going from 50% down to negative 25%. I'm guessing the cooldown on this is going to be 120 as well. The 2 upgrade paths we have on Thorns is going to be Thorns of Overgrowth. So you're going to have the ability to reflect 25% of all damage before mitigations. Reflect that back. If you are dealt 120 times your level damage while the effect is active, it's going to end early. So that's not going to be quite as good. But while it is active, enemies can only lifesteal from you for 50% of your total lifesteal. You gain 5% movement speed and attack speed for each enemy god within 20 units. So this can be used to kind of really reflect that damage and stay around the enemy team, and they can't just kind of run away from you if they have a large ability or something like that. I don't think this is that useful. I don't like the relics that have things that are dependent on what your enemies do. So I don't necessarily love Thorns in general because that really does affect your its entire effect is dependent upon the enemy team attacking you. So if you pop Thorns, well, they can just stop attacking and run away. The other upgrade is Thorns of Sapping Strength. You reflect 35% of all damage you take, so you're going to be reflecting a little bit more compared to Thorns of Overgrowth. While it's active, enemies can only lifesteal from you for 75% of their total lifesteal, so you're going to have less of that lifesteal negated compared to Thorns of Overgrowth. And each basic attack from enemy gods reduces the cooldown of the item by 0.5 seconds. The cooldown is already decreased to 80 seconds, so basically you're going to have this item up way more often compared to Thorns of Overgrowth. But again, completely dependent on enemies attacking you. I don't necessarily like Thorns in Joust or in the game in general, unless you're being super aggressive. But yeah, I have a hard time trying to think of where I would fit this in compared to any or a lot of the other relics. Sundering Spear having the shield damage increase from 50% to 75% and having the cooldown increase from 125 to 130. So Sunder does have kind of a lot of things attached to it, so let's just take a look at it right now. How it acts is you have a bolt that travels 70 units. You deal 77.5% of current health as true damage if you hit them with Sunder, and then it reduces active shields by 50%. You also get 5% increased damage for 5 seconds, and that stacks twice, so you can get up to 10% increased damage if you hit 2 Sunders. So the only real changes that are happening in the Season 9 version is that this is going to be reducing shields by 75%, and that the cooldown is going to be increased by 5 seconds. The Greater Sundering Spear, the upgrade, the health damage is going to be reduced from 12.5 of that true damage to 7.5%, just like the original Sundering Spear, increasing that damage taken debuff from 7%, decreased the increased damage taken debuff from 7% to 5%, so that's going to still stack twice to be 10% increased damage taken, but the cooldown now reduced from 125 to 110. The two upgrade paths on Sundering Spear, first one is going to be Sundering Blast. You fire a bolt that travels 70 units, just like normal. It actually splashes in a 20 unit radius. So again, think of 20 units, about a third of the basic attack range. So a very small radius. But it deals 15% of their current health as damage to anybody in that 20 unit radius, and then reduces shields by 75%. They still take 5% increased damage for 5 seconds that can stack twice, so that's still 10% increased damage. So basically the only difference on this is you have that little area of effect that's going to do 15% current health as true damage. So if you have enemies that are super bunched up all the time, this may be a viable item, but again, you're relying on enemies to do something, which I'm not a huge fan of. The other option for Sunder is the tier 3 Sunder is Sundering Siphon. You fire a bolt that travels 50 units, so it's not going to be as long as that Sundering Blast. It's going to stop on the first god hit, reduce those shields by 75%, but it's going to link them to you. So for 4 seconds, they're going to have 5% of their current health done every second. Right, so 5% of their current health as true damage every single second. That's 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% as true damage. You're going to receive half of that amount as healing guaranteed. They can break that link if they move past 60 units away, but the Relic has 2 charges. So it's not going to do anything as far as doing more damage with a second hit, but it will refresh the duration of the actual siphon itself. So this is an interesting one. It's kind of like a one-on-one style Sunder because you're stealing health. So if you really wanted to get on somebody and just eliminate them yourself, this is kind of a good option. Pretty interesting. I think this is maybe the better option if I was going to choose between these two, just because I can do 20% of somebody's current health as true damage, which is just insane in itself, especially if you have like a Hera, right, who pops her shield. Now you not only are negating 75% of the shield, you're taking 20% of her health and stealing it for yourself. So I think Sundering Siphon is the better option out of these two upgrades. Lastly, we have Teleport Fragment. The only thing that's changing is the name. So it's not a glyph anymore, because there are new things in Season 9 called glyphs, which I'll have a separate video about. But now you're going to have the Teleport Fragment instead. So as a reminder, you can basically teleport to any allied structure unless you are hard CC'd during that like kind of root duration. The cooldown, I believe, is 120, but if you think of Joust and Teleport, it's really kind of useless, so I'm going to just kind of breeze through these ones as fast as I can. Greater Teleport Fragment, no longer be able to teleport to wards, so again, you can only teleport to those allied structures, which is basically one tower in Joust. It's going to take you almost as long to teleport as it is to walk up. Cooldown decreased from 200 to 160. The upgrade paths on Teleport. Using this item, the Heroic Teleport, you can now go to any allied structure or ward. Not interrupted by damage, still is interrupted by hard crowd control. After teleporting, you get a slow immunity, 20% movement speed, and 40 protections. Cooldown decreased from 160 to 130. Pretty useless in Joust still. And then Persistent Teleport, you can teleport to any allied structure or ward while rooted. Not interrupted by damage, is interrupted by crowd control. Kills and assists on enemy gods reduces the cooldown by 10 seconds. So if you had to ambush somebody, right, they're taking your tower, and you surprise them, well, woohoo, now you get another 10 seconds off your cooldown for a relic that you're not going to use. So I know I'm kind of just being a little bit quick on Teleport, but for the Joust, the game mode specifically, don't buy Teleport. If you ever buy Teleport, it is just it's never going to be worth it compared to something else you can buy. So just please, please, please don't even think about it. All right, that's it. That is the Relic updates for Season 9. As you can see, I kind of recorded the original Relic updates, and there were 2 PTS versions that came out after that. So I tried to include those amendments in each of the sections so that you know kind of what's going on at the end of the day before PTS, or after PTS is done and before Season 9 goes live. So hopefully those amendments helped you guys out a little bit. If you did learn something, if you think this is going to help you in Season 9, please like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitch if you want to just talk and ask some questions about these relics too. I'm super excited for Season 9, so I'm ready to get started. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I hope to talk to you guys very soon.